With just 2 tables remaining in the World Series of Poker, Kristen Foxen was a crowd favorite to take the whole thing down. Many people showed their support online, and she was building a stack going into what would become the final table. With just 13 players remaining, she decided to take a stand with one of the biggest bluffs in main event final table history. Unfortunately for her, it didn't work. Was this aggressive gamble a great move or a terrible punt? The internet's already decided, but here we're going to take a closer look and break down exactly what I think about this hand from Kristen Foxen. This is going to be a controversial hand today, and some people already have their mind made up, but you might be surprised what my take is on it. I guess we're going to find out. Let's start off with looking at what exactly went down in this pivotal hand with just 13 players left at the World Series of Poker main event.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
The deep thinker. That alone.
The human rain delay.
Human rain delay.
Troublesome board for Foxen against Sirac. Aces up again for Joe.
Yeah, Sirac had raised under the gun. Foxen coming along in the big blind with a good hand. And now Sirac aces up against just a pair of kings for Kristen.
The hand begins with Kristen Foxen on a reasonable sized stack, probably about average for this point in the tournament, which is always difficult because you're going to have a little more ICM pressure. Now, ICM stands for something. I've never checked it out. I've not really played many tournaments in my life, but I kind of actually don't believe in it. But putting that to the side, Joe Sirac opens under the gun to 2.4 million. And then Kristen Foxen ends up calling in the big blind with King Queen. So a little flat here in the big blind from Kristen. Ace King Jack with 6.6 million already out there. She checks. Joe bets 4 million on the flop. And then Kristen makes the check call here. Going into the turn, we've got about 14.5 million in the middle.
Sirac sizing up Foxen stack. Going to continue barreling. Going to be Queen X, 10X, hearts in there. You know, obviously some of the inferior pair holdings. Top pair, second pair, pair straight draws. This is the board texture that you will expect the under the gun opener to be pretty aggressive on.
That's pretty aggressive. A little longer blink for Kristen that time. Like,
The turn's the 5 of spades. Kristen checks once again, and now Joe decides to bet 11.6 million, sizing up here on the turn, leaving about 25 million behind. And this is where Kristen makes her move. She goes all in.
She
says
in.
all in.
Call.
And a call.
Oh,
She's
my
not
goodness.
going to like getting called.
Oh, my goodness. Foxen looking for a 10 and a 10 only.
Ace, king, queen, king, all in turn.
I have a good shot.
Big pot poker.
And as we've seen, Foxen does not like to watch the board from the table.
Come on, 10. I have a weird spot.
Christy,
Well, this is her biggest misstep of the last several days. And now she needs to be bailed out by a 4-outer.
She's been there before. She's been there 24 hours ago
10.
when she needed an ace. Now She needs a 10 on the finale and does not get it. Kristen Foxen eliminated from the main event.
And we play one of the largest pots of the tournament so far, between a middle upper stack and the chip leader, or approximately the chip leader. So a massive hand here. She goes out with a 600K payout. Let's quickly check these payouts just so we all understand the situation. You can see here that once you're in 13th, which is where she is, the next two people will receive 600K. Two people after that will receive 800K. And then the final table, everyone makes $1 million, and it gradually escalates from there. So there has just been a pay jump here from 450 to 600K. Pretty wild 15 buy-in pay jump, but that's what happens when 10,000 people play a tournament. And this basically, if she does get called and is eliminated, she will end with a 600K payout. And of course, if she gets it through, she's going to be in a pretty great position because she is going to have a good size stack. Will have kind of equalized with the chip leader, at least mainly, and will be in prime position to do some damage moving forward. You can see the chip stacks at the top of the screen. We've got a lot of the chips on this table, actually. Brian Kim is the chip leader with 111 million. C-Rock has 87. Astet has 63. And then she started this hand with 44.5. So one of the shorter stacks here for sure, but she's really not that short. Like the very short stacks have 15 million chips, and she's got 3 times that. So even though there are a few bigger stacks, she's still got a very healthy position. I went through on WSOP updates page to see what the stacks were as close to this elimination as I could. And her stack put her in about 6th place out of the 13 players remaining. So just about right there, smack dab in the middle, going into that hand. So a bunch of short stacks. She's roughly in position to make the final table, but a lot of ICM pressure happening, supposedly. That's what I hear. That's what the kids are saying. Okay, so we know the situation, we know the chips, we know what's going on in the tournament, and now we need to take a look and see what we think with this hand. So I think pre-flop is standard. I don't really see a good argument for 3-betting. She's definitely not going to fold the big blind, getting a great price. So I think call definitely the standard play. I wouldn't be surprised if once in a blue moon you squeeze this, but call is definitely superior, and that's correct. So certainly no issues there. On the flop, ace, king, jack, 2 hearts. This is a board that is very good for the pre-flop raiser because you can have ace, king, ace, jack, king, jack, all the sets, queen 10 suited. Tons of value for the opener. And the big blind defend, the big blind can have queen 10, can have all the queen 10s. And the big blind probably will have a good chunk of ace, jack, but big blind's not going to have any of the sets that often, maybe occasionally jacks. And the big blind's not going to have the strong 2 pairs that often either. Maybe, we'll have some ace, jack. So certainly a range advantage for the player opening under the gun. Now, one more thing I would think about, I would note in this spot is this guy's got a lot of chips. So, he's going to certainly be a lot looser than normal. But the way that the table looks here, he can't go too crazy because Brian Kim has him covered behind, and then Nicholas Astet has a lot of chips as well. So, I think he'll probably be looser than normal, I would imagine, with this stack, but I don't think he's going just crazy to town like we've seen with some chip leaders in the bubble. He's got to get through every player, and there were some big stacks behind him. So I don't think his range is all that crazy. So anyway, on the flop, his bet standard for Foxen now with middle pair and the gutter. It seems like a very standard check call to me. I think in spots like this, generally speaking, you don't lose that much value by not playing flop raises when the board really favors one player. So what does that mean? It means I would not raise anything on the flop here. I would just check call my whole range. As stacks get shorter, that's less true. You are supposed to put more raises in. But typically speaking, if you're playing poker and you're in a situation you think, oh man, my opponent can have tons of good hands here and I really can't, it's usually a good situation to start trapping more. Or if you think it's maybe, they have a lot more hands than you, but you might have some, but not too many, regardless. So I think the flop seems good from both players. Bet on the flop and a call. I'm on board with all of this. Now the turn's where things get interesting. So a couple of things happen here on the turn to be thinking about. before we even get into the action. This is now a double flush draw board. Typically speaking, there is a little more large raises on double flush draw boards to try and deny the equity of hands that are barreling with flush draws. Because when there are two flush draws, there are way more draws that your opponent can have that are looking to bet and bluff because they can have either flush draw. So typically in two flush draw situations, you're going to be using more raising as the player facing bets. That said, I still think I would play most of my range as check call here. Maybe you could do a little bit of check raising all in with some of your best two pairs, some queen 10, and work in some bluffs, some like queen X of hearts or spades seems kind of natural. Maybe 10X of hearts or spades seems kind of natural. But I would be looking to mainly still check call this turn and maybe put in a few check raises. One more note, you'd want your check raise bluffs to not have cards that your opponent will be bluffing with. So intuitively, something like queen deuce of hearts or queen deuce of spades makes more sense as a bluff than like queen 9, because with queen 9, the 9 will block more of the barreling draws like 10-9, 9-8, that kind of stuff. But I know we're getting nitty gritty, but that's what we do here on the channel. We get kind of nitty gritty. Point of the matter is, I don't mind some check raise all in here on the turn. I just don't see where king queen falls in it. Now, that said, there are a few things I like about this. Okay, now I would prefer not to do this. I'd prefer just to call, but there are a few things I like about this. King queen here, when you have the offsuit queen, you do block more of the value that's going to call you, queen 10 specifically. And you also don't block as many of the flush draws if your opponent was opening with queen 9 suited, queen 8 suited, that kind of stuff. Maybe your opponent is betting twice with a pair and a gutter, or a pair and a flush draw, and doesn't want to call a jam. Not quite that likely, but possible. So I think having the non-flush draw queen, the queen of diamonds here, is better than the other ones. And then the interesting thing about having a king is when you have a king, you actually block ace, king, king, jack, king, king. So you do block a good chunk of value bets. The reason why I think my take might be surprising here, I think this is not good. But I think it's pretty close. I think that there's some logic here for why she's picking this hand. It does block a good portion of value, and it does unblock a good portion of bluffs. So I would say I think this hand is slightly bad. I don't think this hand is an intergalactic turbo punt that people seem to be thinking online. Now, I'm thinking about things purely from chip EV. If you want to go down the ICM rabbit hole, I would encourage you don't, because I think that it's a trap that people get into. I think mindset-wise, she should be playing to win the tournament, and she is. She's playing to win the tournament, which should be the point, guys. Look at you over there. You think you know what to do in the main event. You know, she punted. What a loser. But have you thought about, what if he was bluffing? What if he bet folded ace queen? What if he had a flush draw that would have got there and gets denied? What if he just had nothing? This could have worked. And if it did work, and she built a stack, people would look back on that pivotal king-queen hand and think, wow, that's what it takes. So next time we're going to Monday morning quarterback on a big decision someone made to try and win the tournament, you're going to do the exact same thing. Yeah, I don't know why I said that. I'm wasting my time. Anyway, all right, so that's my thoughts. Let's think about this a little bit more. So normally at this point, I would jump into some solver review. But what I learned from my past videos is you guys hate that. So let's jump into some solver review. But before we jump into that solver review, I'm going to play today's free Cardle, the Wordle-inspired upswing poker daily quiz for free on Lucid GTO. Today is 3-bet pots out of position. You get to play some free spots, and then it will explain to you why things are true. It's actually a really great learning tool. You get to play poker and see what apparently I said. And it's definitely me there, because otherwise, why would my face be in the image? Jack 10-6 here, 3-bet pot in the small blind. So in these situations, there's usually a pretty strong range asymmetry for the small blind. Lots of draws on this board. Some of these boards actually are like the biggest sizes that you like to use. So I would say I would mainly bet large with this hand. The RNG is at 66, so fairly aggressive, 1 being passive, 100 being aggressive. So we're going to go for the big size. Correct. You should see bet for a large size here. And then it breaks down a bunch of different stuff, explains why, and then you play later streets. And sometimes we show you like different boards to kind of give examples and why one's better or not. This is totally free. So if you want to get a free lesson every day, I would jam turn. Correct. Look at me go. It's like I wrote the quiz. But as you can see, then explains why, and you can jump into more hands and break down different spots. Like, for example, same situation. But now we have an ace of completing the flush on the turn, and you basically get to play out all these different spots and see if you're right or wrong. And again, totally free. So head on over to upswingpoker.com, check out Lucid GTO to start your quiz training today. What do you guys think about the word Cardle? It's something. Alrighty, so let's take a look at the simulation and go through everything. So this is the pre-flop ranges I put in. I just kind of estimated. I don't play tournaments. So check. This is what the betting range would look like for the opener. It's a bit loose, but again, bigger stack WSOP main event. Sometimes people get crazy. I don't know. Back over to Foxen. King, queen, pure check calling the flop. You do see some check raising happening, by the way, on the flop for the 3E size, so 3 streets of betting. Regardless, king, queen, pure check call. She makes that. Turn 5 of spades. Checks once again. This is what the barreling range looks like for the opener. You can see ace, king, pure betting. But we do see hands like ace, queen, ace 10. Some of the ace 9, ace 8, if those did open, a bit crazy. Those are barreling. And we see actually prefers betting with the offsuit queens over the suited ones to make sure you don't get check raised all in. So queen 9, queen 8, like bluffing a bit more here, which makes some of my other analysis wrong, but that's why I'm not a computer. Anyway, let's look at her decision, because that's what we care about, right? What should she do facing this bet? This is what it is. So red is raise, green is call, blue is fold. We can see here with king, queen, you are pure calling the turn. So you would never raise. That said, if we look at the EV, raising will lose a slight amount. 700K chips, 800K chips, depending on which king, queen you raise with. Her specific one looks like it loses about 700K chips. So not great, but in a pot that is 80 or 90 million chips, losing 700K, not really a huge blunder. So I would say slightly bad. I think that's kind of a fair assessment. What hand should she jam? Well, we can see that the queen X, where you have the flush draw, likes jamming, likes bluffing with when you turn the 5 to block some 2 pairs and sets. Some 10X of hearts, some queen X of hearts. Those are the main bluffs. So basically, wow, you're going to check jam here with a lot of 2 pairs. Apparently the solver does not like to check call with ace jack or ace 5. Even king jack check jamming some. So apparently you just need to be a bit stronger or a bit weaker than this. We're firmly in the middle. So king, queen should call. One more note with the queen 10. Oh, this is pretty cool, I think, guys. This is the point. If you take nothing away from this, this is a good point to take away. Look at the queen 10s in the bottom right. Look at the ones that like to call and the ones that like to jam. Queen 10, no heart, no spade, is always jamming the turn here because it's vulnerable. So if you have queen 10 with none of the suits, you want to jam because it's more likely the flushes come in. Whereas if you have queen 10 with a heart and the spade, you block the backdoor flushes from coming in. It's also less likely your opponent has a flush draw. So you are trapping, which I think is a pretty cool thing to see. You trap when you have the suits that block it, and you jam when you don't. Similar with the flush draws, you have queen 10 of hearts, queen 10 of spades, just too strong, you have to trap, but off the other queen 10 suited, you can just jam it in. When she does jam, the solver never folds ace, queen, ace 10. Kind of wild. So maybe that analysis for me was also poor, but in reality, I think a lot of people are going to fold ace, queen, ace 10 if you don't have the flush draw. It's just so unlikely you're facing a bluff. I think people will kind of skew towards playing a bit too conservative. And, oh man, the solver calls jack 10. Jesus, this is just madness, man. One more thing to talk about, right? Which is the one that people always bring up. They say, well, but if you're wrong, you're out of the main, and people are imploding, and there's all these mistakes going on, and if you're wrong, you're out. And to those people, are there that many mistakes going on? Look at the final table. This is a lot of good players. This is not the kind of lineup where you can just crush everybody. You're gonna have to play some good, strong poker. And if nothing else, I can respect that Kristen Foxen decided she had to make a move in her biggest moment with the most eyes on her. She thought it was a necessary bluff she had to make, and she made it and got stacked and went home and faces all of this negative feedback from people. And she knew that would happen if she was wrong. And she still did it because it was right, because she believed it was right. Was it right? Probably not. But I think the lesson to take away here is when you play at a final table, when you play in any poker tournament, you need to do the thing you think is right and let the chips fall as they may. And overly worrying about if someone else is going to view you the right way or the wrong way, people would stop making plays and we would stop getting some of the great hands of poker. Also, do you think that maybe, just maybe, she made a few moves on her way to the final 13 people of a 10,000 person tournament? You're not going to get aces that many times, guys. Sometimes you're going to have to make moves. So, tip of the cap to Kristen Foxen. Probably not the best play, but it's certainly one I can respect.